there, it's Christy. Welcome to the Chirp YouTube channel. I am your friendly online speech language pathologist and specialist in children's communication development, including behavior, because behavior is a type of communication. Today we are talking again about the pyramid model, and the reason we're talking about the pyramid model is because it is one framework for looking at ways to reduce or eliminate challenging behavior. And challenging behavior is one of the biggest issues we deal with kids in general, but especially kids who have different developmental pathways. The behavior is often the thing that makes us the craziest. And it isn't great for the kids either because it's not very functional and it doesn't actually solve their problems. So we want to put in place things that can actually solve their problems and meet their needs. We are talking about nurturing and responsive relationships. And the topic in that arena we're going to talk about today is about how to enter a child's world. The phrase I'm going to use today is join and amplify. And I'm going to talk about a little friend I had. We'll call him Jacob, though that is not his real name. He used to like to play in the water. He used to tell us he had to go to the bathroom. He didn't actually use words to do this. He just went into the bathroom, and so we assumed he had to go to the bathroom. But he was really excited to wash his hands, and then he would play in the water and in the soap suds. This is not unusual. It's super fun to play in water. I also enjoy playing in the water and soap suds and bubbles and all of that. And it's very tempting to allow a child to do enjoyable things all by himself, to just leave him there to play in the soap suds. If my mission is to build a nurturing and responsive relationship with him, then I need to actually build a relationship with him instead of just standing back and allowing him to do things he enjoys. That's where the join part of this video comes in. I need to join Jacob in doing his preferred activity, even if I think it's lame. I don't think it's lame, but even if I did, I would still join and play in the bubbles with Jacob. That's pretty simple. That is join. Amplify will require a little bit more thought on your part. Amplify means make it harder in this case. And by harder, I simply mean interactive. Somehow make this preferred activity a relational activity instead of a solo activity. The way I did this in various ways. One of the ways was putting my hand down in the bubbles and going bam or splash or something along those lines. We'll just say bam. So I went bam and bubbles kind of splat up. And the first time I did this was a surprise. And of course, Jacob is going to be very shocked, but also kind of happy because this is a new thing to do with bubbles that he hasn't done before. So then the likelihood is that he will also do bam. And then it becomes interactive because we have created a pattern. We have created a circle of communication. I do a bam, he does a bam, I do a bam again. That's a circle. That is what we're looking for. This is an interactive relationship that we are forming. That's communication. Another thing I could do is I could turn on the water a little bit and then turn it off. And he hadn't quite figured out how to turn the water on yet. So he would have to either look at me or say water or something, touch my arm, in order to get me to turn it on a little bit so there would be more bubbles. I could do the same thing with the soap. He would have to do something interactive, something relational, something social, something communicative in order to get what he actually wanted, which was to play in the bubbles in the sink. Think about an activity that your target child really enjoys. Perhaps it's lining up Hot Wheels just in a long line on the carpet. Perhaps it is spinning something in front of her eyes or her fingers maybe. Perhaps it is spinning in circles, her whole body spinning in circles. Perhaps, as in one case, a little girl I worked with, I'll call her Erica, she liked to move very slowly like this in front of a mirror and watch herself out of the corner of her eye, very slowly. kind of like a ballet dancer in slow-mo. It was very interesting. How, just a little moment here, pause me if you must, how could you join in that child's preferred activity? I would love it if you would leave me a comment down below to tell me some of these activities that your child or student really enjoys, because sometimes they're super quirky and really fascinating to me. I would love to hear. Okay, so I already talked about playing in the sink, in the bubbles. I talked about the mirror dancing. She also liked to do that when her shadow could be seen. It was very interesting and super cute. And I told you about the lining up of the cars. Those are some of the, I've seen those multiple times, but there are always super quirky ones. So let me know what yours are. Okay, how would you get involved in those? Usually with cars. I will line cars up as well, but then I will always do something surprising to kind of shock the system. Usually with cars, I'll have a naughty car come along and crash into my line of cars and make a big mess. And that is enough to shock the child. But usually the child thinks that's, first of all, they find it threatening, but I didn't crash into his line of cars. I crashed into my line of cars. So it's less threatening. Sometimes the child will imitate that by crashing a car into his own line of cars. Sometimes he won't. But usually he looks at me. What just happened? What a mess. And then, I can fix it or whatever. So that's one way that I add an element of surprise. It's not exactly interactive yet, but if he's driving cars, I can drive cars right next to his cars. If he's lining them up, I can line up mine. That is joining. And then I need to amplify. How would you amplify these lines of cars? Perhaps as I park the cars, I count them. Perhaps I make a pattern out of the cars. One goes this way and one goes this way. Perhaps I make a pattern like this. I'm feeling like an Egyptian. Perhaps I make a pattern with colors of the cars. Perhaps I have, usually, because I'm a speech pathologist and I deal in communication, usually I have the cars start talking to each other. Usually I have the cars start talking to the child's cars. Hello, my name is Maurice. What's your name? And usually the child thinks this is funny because it's cars. They don't usually talk. But in this case, they must. We're learning how to communicate better. Everything must speak. It all has a personality. That's a good example of how you could join and amplify with the lining up of cars. Of course, this whole time you are also doing what I talked about in the previous video, which is you're monitoring and adjusting. If the child is getting really tense, starting to go, ooh, starting to really leave the room or cover his head up or refuse to look at you, these are all signs that you're pushing it too far and the child is really upset because his pattern has been disrupted and he can't quite handle that level of change at this time. We want this to be a fun and playful interaction. We're not looking to push the child into a meltdown. So continue to monitor and adjust even as you are joining and amplifying. These steps build on each other. So we always want to keep doing the previous step even while we introduce the next step. So think about your next thing. How did I join in the child who liked to look at herself in the mirror? I also danced in the mirror and she would push me away and I'd say, go away. And I'd model for her what she should say, go away. So then I'd sneak back in a little bit and then she'd push me. I'd say, go away. But eventually I wouldn't move unless she looked at me. She can't just push, she has to actually look at me. We are learning more in-depth ways of communicating and being an interactive partner as I make it a little bit more challenging. Again, we always have to be monitoring and adjusting. If she started to cry, then I needed to back way off, maybe even leave the room and leave her alone for a while to regroup and recenter herself in the healthy zone. If she was laughing and giggling as she looked at me and pushed me away, then we are in the right zone to continue interacting and enjoying each other's company. And that's what we want. We want to have trusting relationships. We're not there to push the child so hard that she can't control herself and she falls to pieces. That's not a healthy relationship. We want to have the kind of relationship where I can introduce slightly more difficult tasks communicatively, where I can push her a little bit, but it's fun and it's playful and it's silly, and we can both enjoy it and we can both enjoy our relationship. That's what makes me a safe person in this child's life. That's what makes it worthwhile to keep trying to communicate with me, because I can reliably be trusted to assume the best and not to push the child too hard, so that every time I come over, she's left at her wit's end because I pushed so hard to get what I wanted out of that child. That's not our goal. Our goal is to build a trusting and reciprocal relationship. Thank you for being here with me today. I hope this video was helpful. Once again, let me know some of those cute little behaviors that your kids do that you are going to figure out how to join in and amplify. Feel free to also leave me how you're going to join in and then how you might amplify. Leave me questions if you have some, and don't hesitate to give me a thumbs up or subscribe should you feel like it. See you in my next video. Bye.